It's
Okay,
okay.
cool. Cool, cool, cool. All right. All right. Let me do the formal YouTube intro here and we'll get going. Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, Internet's busiest music nerd, and it is time for an exclusive interview on our Twitch page with two of underground hip hop's most exciting and bold artists. At the moment, we have Moor Mother and Billy Woods, who are fresh off of a collaborative record, Brass, that a lot of you guys in chat and who watch the channel have been listening to. Pretty dedicated, listening to it in a dedicated fashion because it's so goddamn good. And we're going to throw as many questions as we can about that new record and anything else that comes up at these two in this conversation. You know, and anybody who's been paying attention to what's been going on beyond the mainstream in hip hop for, you know, the past at least half a decade is aware of what, you know, both of you guys are doing to some degree. But if you could tell everyone watching and, you know, just sort of hip everyone to this, how exactly did your paths eventually cross and drive you into this very deep and intense collaboration?
Well, can I start by saying, because I knew who she was because she's more famous than me. I knew who she was before she knew who I was. I went to a show years ago at this place called the Knockdown Center with this cat, Joseph Malt, who I've done a lot of video work since then. And I mean, I knew who she was because I think I don't even know if Elucid had met you yet, but he had put me onto your music, and Joseph definitely knew your music. And a friend of his worked, this woman, Tara, worked as a director at the Knockdown Center, and you had this show, and they were like, you should come see her perform. Do you know what show I'm talking about?
Yeah, Show Me the Body actually asked
Huge
me to play that.
auditorium, like ceiling so high, and you were on the ground, and everyone was just in a circle around you. And I left that show like, wow, that was the way that somebody takes charge of a space, especially because as a performer, especially at that time, I always felt a little bit off when you're on the same level as the people. And then you're trying to just perform, let alone in a circle. And I remember at one point in the show, you grabbed this dude in the front row who was cheering while still rapping and just drove him back about 10 feet, 15 feet by his lapels. And I was like, this is crazy. This is crazy. Yo, this is crazy. She just grabbed this dude up at the show and pushed him way out while you were rapping in his face, came back. I was like, yo, it was really impressive. And that always stuck with me. That was years before I actually even ever met you. So.
Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that you were at that gig. No, I remember, I think, seeing you at that gig.
I mean, you didn't know who I was. I know that.
Yeah, I didn't know who you were, but like, you know, the crowd wasn't so good looking. You know what I mean? You notice people, you know?
Yeah.
So I definitely noticed you. Oh shit, that's so weird.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was somebody, a woman opened and was playing some music who knew one of the guys who brought me there, and then I saw you perform. But
yeah, that place was so huge. I was like, crazy. What is this place?
Crazy. And then it really just impressed me, like, to stand in the middle of this. It was like a church type vaunted ceiling, and you're just on the floor with all these people around you. And I was like, man, that could be really, as a performer, it could be intimidating. And you brought it to everybody. And I was like, wow. Especially because I didn't know your music or anything. I knew your name, and that was it. But yeah, as far as this thing that happened here on my end, I've been introduced to her music by Elucid. And then eventually we did a show together in Philly. And that's when we built on collaborating. We did an Arm & Hammer show in Philly with Moor Mother. And then backstage, you know, we were like, yo, we're doing this record. You should be on it. She was like, cool. And then, you know, that happened. And then she hit me up about doing the Adult Swim thing, and things just rolled from there.
Did you remember the last time you and I had a conversation, Billy? Like the last time, you know, we interviewed, whenabouts that was?
call me
Oh,
Woods. So
that's right. You did ask for that. So, I know during the interview, not first name basis. So Woods, do you recall the first time that we sort of talked in person? When exactly that was, and sort of what I guess the time period that was artistically, I guess.
I feel like it was in Connecticut at one of the shows. Forget the name of that guy. But this really tall dude used to book these shows in Connecticut, and I did one of them in a laundromat. Behind the laundromat, there was like a little room behind the laundromat, and I did a show there sometime around Dower Candy. And then after that, I know for sure if it was not there, I did a weird sort of one-day festival in Connecticut. I forget the name of it. And you were definitely
No,
there.
we had a conversation. I think it was a CMJ, and that was the festival. And maybe we had met or talked before then, but I know like the first long form, like formal interview that we did was like at that CMJ show, and it was just as you were like starting Arm & Hammer with Elucid. And one of the things that you said to me when you stuck out in that interview is, I asked you exactly like what you feel each of you brings to the table, or sort of like how you're interacting each other, like what is the working dynamic as you're collaborating. And one of the things that like stood out was that you were so impressed with Elucid's flow, and that you felt artistically you had to almost keep up with that in a way. And in this context with Moor Mother, as a collaborator, does she bring also challenges for you as an artist, to sort of like put you sort of your creative bar higher, I suppose?
Top 5 rap voices currently working right now, easily, is to me like Moor Mother's voice is crazy. It's crazy. And we talked about this before, but her creative process is very, from what I can see, very unencumbered. And so things come and go, and she'll build on stuff after you think, oh, okay, this is done. And then there'll be another piece added, whereas I tend to be like, all right, we finished. And then she's like, no, we're not finished. It's like, just gonna add this piece, put another little sprig of thyme into the pot, do this and that, and has a producer's ear, in terms of sometimes people want to do little fine tunings, or, oh, I'm not sure if that transition goes exactly right. And then you're like, sounds fine to me. But then once you do what the producer ear told them to do, then you're like, oh, okay, I see now that you were right all along. You know what I mean?
And Moor Mother, in that context, like, does Woods almost become like a stabilization component, or maybe more of an element of consistency or steadiness, I guess?
I guess what I appreciate or I gain from the most is, I guess, the quality of writing. That's really cool, because it's like you can rap with anyone, with kids, for workshops, whatever. But when you get to rap with people that really know how to rap, it's like, it's so much fun. It makes your pen like, it just sharpens your pen. Like, you think harder, or not harder, but you think like, you think more, you just apply more. You're just like, oh, we can really go deep on the story or something. So, that's the best part for me.
What would you say was one of the most interesting as a result of working with Billy, like, narrative or story type deep dives that you guys were able to do on at least one of these tracks, sort of collaborate on a theme, or, a narrative, an idea?
Well, I thought Gang for a Day was amazing, especially when Woods comes back with the colors, at that verse. I was just like, wow, we're really hitting this on so many different points, which I really appreciated, because, usually a song only hits maybe one or two directions, you know, when it comes to the vantage point or something, you know, the point of view, or, you know, we just came at so many angles. It was like we jumped somebody, you know, we're like 7 people, but it was just 3 of us or 4 of us, including the producer, you know. It was really cool. I think that came together really well.
Yeah, I mean, narrative-wise, that's certainly, I think, one of the the clearest and most hard-hitting tracks. Another one that stood out to me was, you know, The Blues Remembers. One of the things about that track that I think really stands out to me personally is kind of the way you two frame music as like a historical, you know, component is almost more honest than history can be. You know, do you guys generally feel like music tells, you know, more truth than you can even find in the classroom in a lot of cases?
It's different, you know what I mean? I think that that's an interesting song to pick, especially because it had it had an interesting process behind it. That beat was given to us at the same time as the beat for Furies. So that's like right at the genesis of the project, but ended up being one of the last things that definitely in the last 25% of things that we did. And even at that point, it was kind of, we started off because Kamei liked the beat, but we didn't use it initially for Furies, but I kept it in the pocket. And then Willie Green, who made that and Furies, was like, oh, are you guys using that? What are you doing with that? And so I ran it by her again. And she was like, I still like this. I haven't written anything. And just sat around a little longer as we were working on the project. And then I had this idea of giving it to that woman, Wolf Weston, amazing artist from St. Mela. And, you know, she was like, well, what's the ideas? And so I just kind of talked to her about what the album was about and stuff like that. And she said, oh, I want to change a couple of things. And the beat, you know, she has a producer's ear too, and had a few things she wanted to move around and do things with her bandmates. And so they ended up tinkering and then sending back the initial parts of that. And I had been thinking, I didn't even think we were necessarily going to rap on it because Kamei had picked it, but she hadn't rapped on it yet. And then once it came back, she was like, this is amazing. I got something for it. Knocked it out super fast. And so I just came in like, how can I take what's already been brought to me and try to like find a good ending place, you know, progress that narrative that these 2 women had already handed me, you know. So it was interesting because it was a little game of not quite telephone, but like writing a Mad Lib, you know, but it was actually started by somebody outside of the group. A lot of hands in that group. And Shabaka Hutchins played a part in making the beat. There was samples. So it was a lot of hands in there. I feel like as far as to your actual question, I don't know, man. I feel like music, it's kind of like saying what tells a story better, like a poem or a novel. I don't, you know, it depends. You know, it's a whole different type of energy, which that even speaks to. But it was really Kamei who, her line dictated where I went. So I don't know exactly what made you think of that line, the Blues Remembers quote, but that's what pushed me to, okay, well, this is how we're approaching it.
Kamei, do you want to speak to the origin of that line?
Yeah, it comes from Gil Scott-Heron, who is a great influence to me. So I wanted to, you know, not so much pay tribute, but it's these kind of, you know, statements that can be very powerful, made through music, that can stand the test of time, that can be spoken in 1980, whatever, and really can capture what's happening right now. So I just thought that it was a beautiful set off, you know. The beat to me was like a movie. I remember being so excited about this beat, but I had other songs that I was working on, you know, so I couldn't get to it just yet. But I was absolutely in love with it, you know. So I knew something, really amazing was going to happen. And then when Wolf Weston sent it back, oh my goodness, I was like 8 years old because it was just so easy. And, when the beat also is saying a lot, that really helps and adds to the textures of, the story you're trying to say or tell.
It's interesting hearing you, sort of talk about the origin of that line, because as separate as I feel like you and Woods are stylistically, there's really like a common wavelength that I see, at least between your creative processes as an outsider. And that's that both of you pull so passionately from speakers, writers, philosophers of various stripes. Woods has tons of references in his own work to television and film. I mean, some of the, ones on this very record, Moms Mabley, Toni Morrison, Baldwin as well, who, is referenced across the board by a lot of people, but still. I guess what I want to ask is there consciously like a rigorous diet between both of you, or just engagement on this, on any level with this kind of material, in order to just kind of like throw logs into your fire essentially as you're writing and as you're kind of like conceptualizing new ideas musically and poetically?
That's a good question. Although the first thing, not answering your question, but it just made me think about the fact, probably for the first time, that we both draw a lot on all of those things. But for the first time, I really thought about the fact that, Moor Mother is in many different aspects and ways. She's a futurist, an Afrofuturist. And like my history will absolve me, like my music is like backward. I don't want to, neither of these are, I don't want to create a binary situation, because I don't think that my music is only backwards looking, but history in the past is like a theme in my music a lot. So it is really interesting that you have a futurist and a historian making this record, and it does everything in a way. But I haven't really thought about that. For me, I don't know if I would say that's true. I definitely try to read things and grab things of all kinds just to stay inspired. And, but man, I read so much more when I was 15 than I do now. It's like embarrassing, but I definitely still try to be reading things and looking at things, but that's just how my life has always been. So I don't know if I actually, the times when I sit down and I'm like, okay, I'm trying to spark an idea, it does happen, but it's usually not like planned. I just grab a book that's near me and I'm like, maybe if I read for a while, something will tap in. I'm not like, let me go get this book for the specific purpose of working on this. No, not really.
Moor Mother, same question essentially.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I go get a book to do something, but things that I read, stories that stick with me, of course, are going to run through. I love, a lot of stories about, musicians that I admire. So those stories of, things that they went through on the road and stuff like that sticks to me. I do a lot of different projects. So I have, I have a lot of interest. So these things just come in. I would say I have a healthy relationship with books, but I like more like history books and stuff on religion and books on time.
But the projects you work on also means you come into contact with like a wide cross section of other artists and thinkers on a regular basis. Even looking at like the 9 projects you did last year, it's like plays, sound projects, regular rap album, record with the band, poets, you do academic shit. So I think, I don't know, being around you, I could get the vibe that there's and seeing who you brought in to do what. You know, you've got a wide breadth of personal connections and types of arts that you're involved in beyond just even like this.
No, yeah, there's a lot of great artists that I've had the opportunity to meet and link up with on tour and learn from, and you know, it's beautiful. I find like jazz cats are more willing to connect more and experiment, you know, and you know, I just find that a lot of people are trying to get to, you know, a point outside themselves with sound, you know, and I'm lucky to meet with these, you know, meet up with these people that are not just satisfied, you know. Um, yeah, I kind of forget what the question was, to be honest.
I mean, I think you guys got to it, but
but
to move on to something that you referenced back to earlier, you know, I think it's interesting for you to bring up Woods, the futurism of this record and Moor Mother's art in general. And I don't know, in a way it does make me think, because I agree with that sentiment. I think this is very much a future, you know, a futurist record. And, you know, I think there is an element of futurism inherent in a lot of experimental music across the board. But simultaneously, in a way, is that at odds with the darkness of the record, or maybe even like a perceived pessimism? Like, can you be a futurist while at the same time, you know, portraying a feeling that maybe even things are doomed? I guess, you know, and do you guys even feel like that feeling comes through on the record? You know, that things are sort of like, you know, going in a negative direction.
Well, I would say a couple
Sure.
things on that. First of all, you could definitely, I feel like everything is doomed regardless of what, right? That's the nature of life and existence in and of itself.
That's a point.
So even to the struggle is to find what in that is the meaning or the spark or whatever. I mean, if you just sit down and you're like, one day I'm going to die, so what's the point? Arguably true, but then that's the end of the story right there. If that's your interpretation, it's just a wrap, you know what I mean? I think it's about trying to remember how Baldwin put it, but you know, like what you can create, the all of the things that can happen in the face of that void, and the fact that those things are coming. So I don't always, and sometimes I feel like people see things as, I guess I feel two ways. One, I bring a lot of the darkness into other people's projects sometimes, you know, like you listen to the Small Bills record, you're like, well, Lucy's doing great, man. He's chilling. I'm the one who's bringing these records down. But so part of it, I think, is like, I do bring a certain darkness, which, and then whoever I'm collaborating with, I try to reach for their light, and maybe sometimes they reach in for a little bit of the dark. But I also feel like that you can definitely, darkness does not in any way preclude futurism or positivity either, you know, because I mean, whatever, the Bible is dark, but it's also like positive and telling you you're going to live forever. It's like, you can't, if you're making something that's not confronting that there's no element at all about the darkness that exists in human lives, no element hidden anywhere in the art you're making, and it plays no role, then that isn't really, to me, it's not going to resonate. Just like if you listen to something or you read a book and it's just like bad, everything is just, nothing means anything, everything's negative, you know, that's not, you'll stop after a certain number of pages, because that's not reflective of real life either. You know, nobody sits around every day just like everything sucks all the time. So I would hope that there's some type of balance in there, and it's found at some place. But anyway.
yeah, I'm shocked. I'm shocked to see people say that it's a dark record. Like, I mean, there are dark points that are on purpose, you know? But I think it's like a nice, nice feeling. We got the vocals coming in here. It's a nice blend there. Like all these pieces, we put a nice sample there to break it up. We let you breathe. Like, and then it gets to what's the name of the song? Uh, with Scary Hours. John Forte. I mean, Woods did make that song dark, right? Because before he rapped, it wasn't as dark. I thought it was going to be like our pop hit. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, this is going to be our pop hit. I can't believe it. And then Woods said the verse, and I was like, it's not going to be the pop hit, but it's like such an amazing song. And but I don't know. I feel like we gave these moods.
No, I
don't know.
I agree. I mean, while there are some like bold and experimental parts of the record, sections of, the track that I referenced earlier, Blues, as well as Scary Hours, do have some really accessible moments. And that track also stands out as, I think, a really unique one for both of you because of the really lush orchestral instrumentation on that track too, which made me want to ask both of you, how instrumentally did that one come together? Because not only does it stand out on the record for that reason, but I think, in both of your catalogs for that reason too. Like, it's really an immense instrumental display.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, John Forte gets his props right there. Him and Preservation, obviously. Preservation made the beat. Him and John had a relationship unbeknownst to me, and then I brought the beat to John, and he was like, I know this guy. And he was like, do you mind if I do a couple things? And Prez is, luckily for us, is the type of like chill, humble dude who is like, hell yeah, if he wants to do something, let's see how it sounds. And he brought that in, and Prez was like, this is like a movie. Yeah, I think everybody else was like, this is the opening of a movie, and I can't do it. Could significantly cut the ceiling lower on where that song could go. But yeah, that one, a lot of credit for that orchestral part to John Forte, man. He visioned that and did that, and to Prez for being open to letting somebody else do that. And he is such a meticulous post-production guy. He really brought out so many sounds in that, and in Archaeology. He really blessed us on this. Also, I want to point out, how much more positive does the end of the album need to be than Portraits? I mean,
right.
What we cooked food as a family and sat down to eat.
True. It does leave on a more positive note. It does lead on a more positive note.
I even pretended to pray for the family's sake. You know what I mean? I winked out of one eye. Like, it's a positive ending. I'm like, it's pretty. I didn't think there's definitely dark, like there's definitely very dark moments, and it's a heavy record, but I thought there was some. It ended on an up note, and it came in on a very chill one.
To ask you guys one more question about, I guess, the instrumental palette of the record, and I guess the way the album flows. I mean, one of the most standout qualities of the LP is how well the both of you and your producers as well, I imagine, got all of these tracks to segue into each other. You're talking about how movie-like that Scary Hours instrumental is, but I think the album overall feels movie-like in just how sonically and in terms of like one handing off momentum to the other, rhythmically each track is connected as well. It feels like just, a tapestry, an ongoing series in a way. Was that something that you two had intended from kind of the initial moments of Brass, or is that something that kind of developed over time?
Yeah, we just made the tracks, and then once we had them kind of sketched out, Woods said, I got a track list, or put together a track list. If you want to talk more about that, Woods. as far as the initial track list?
Yeah, I mean, I will say I'm definitely a person who, when I'm working on an album, I'm like building the track list in my head from real early as pieces come in and just in my which is interesting because not, I think all artists tend to assume everybody does the same thing, and then you actually around people and you're like, oh, you do shit completely different, and your shit's dope too, and so like somebody like me and Elusive working together, he doesn't worry about any of that until later. But when we're doing Arm& Hammer records, usually I'm the one who's like, okay. And then I show it. And so it kind of went the same way where then Kame was like, vetoed this. Okay, I want this here. And so then, it's like, how can I move those pieces around? Or there's songs where I felt really strongly like, okay, this should, Guinness needs to be connected to the back end of Scary Hours. I was like, that Guinness has to follow Scary Hours for a couple reasons, and just working through it like that. And then after that point, it comes down to that's when I kind of tend to step back a little bit and let the producers like Kame, let Willie Green, the master, the wizard behind the curtain, let him step in sometimes and be like, how exactly is it best to make these transitions? And occasionally I did learn from doing terror management. Sometimes it's, if you want to do things like that, it can also be good to bring the two producers together and be like, or one of the producers at least even, and be like, all right, this is how this is going to go here or whatever. So it was a little bit of all of those sorts of things. Like I said, sometimes I put things together and then other people are like, okay, this needs to actually end like this. Like, remember the thing with the bells? There was something with the bells.
Yeah.
Need some bells. And I'm sitting there like, we got to turn this project in. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And the bells
but the bells were so important. I felt like, I don't know. I felt like it was so important. And then what happened? It sounded so beautiful. It was like rain into the next track, like on some fucking whatever director that's good, It was just like a nice segue. I can't even remember what track it was, which is crazy, but I always felt so strong about that at the moment. Yeah, I can't remember what track.
Hold on, which one? With the rain?
That had the bells. That had the bells.
Yes, and you were like, we need bells in there, and then once it was done, it was perfect, man. It might have been, it wasn't archaeology, even though that's what my mind is telling me. It was something else.
It was early.
Yeah, it was early.
Anyway. Yeah, whatever.
You have those sort of moments, and then yeah, a lot of credit to the producers and definitely Willie Green, Kame, making like my ideas for transitions sometimes actually come together.
Speaking of that, you guys talk about how collaborative this record is, even beyond the both of you. And if you could go into a little bit, how exactly did the pandemic impact that process? Was there a lot of distance essentially between everybody during all of this? Did both of you have to essentially, be separate from the people who you're working with in a way that maybe you haven't had to be before on previous projects?
No, I had already been working, doing throughout the whole year of working with people, making songs. So it was pretty simple. It was more like, there needs to be a singer here. There needs to be someone here, and you think about who would be perfect for it, There's a lot of people a lot of voices that would have worked so well on this record, but it's just about being a curator of it, You're kind of not just randomly grabbing people. Sometimes people don't work out, but you kind of know the vibe you want. You know the vibe that you want to have on it. So yeah, it was very easy, and we're reaching out to our friends. In my case, you know, I'm reaching out to people that I've had a relationship with, people that are my colleagues that we have wanted to work together or, have things cooking up, So it was more of a friend situation than, some type of politic about collaboration.
And to, I guess, switch to maybe even more of a business perspective in a way with Woods. I mean, everybody who's been following what you do for a long time knows that you're a veteran of sorts in a way. You've been rapping for a while, but at the same time, you're running and distributing and directing a lot over at Backwoods Studios as well. Not even just your own music, some of the time. And, as you're sort of engaging in these projects as an artist, is that ever at odds with sort of your duties or your ambitions as a label head, if ever?
Hold on. I got to do something real quick, but I'm going to answer your question and then I'll kill the camera for 1 second. At odds, probably. At odds is very definitive, but sometimes definitely it's tough to say because sometimes you're like, well, I would just rather be doing something else. That doesn't mean it's at odds. I would rather be like writing rhymes than like the PR sheets or, in a meeting about how we can attempt to use the canvas function on Spotify for our artists. These are not cool things that I like desperately want to know. But a lot of times it's like, that's what I also get paid. So, it's not the end of the world. It's my company. Somebody's got to do it. And really doesn't sometimes make sense for me to be hiring somebody to write a PR sheet. I can obviously do that. You know what I mean? But yeah, sometimes I would much rather be doing other things for sure. And sometimes as an artist, I think that's always part of the case, and definitely if you have anyone out there with a day job, a person could look at it in some ways like that. There's times when you're at your day job when you'd rather be writing raps. And I definitely sat in the meeting about Spotify Canvas and would have rather been playing some assigned music beats.
All right, I'm going to jump into a few viewer questions before we send you guys off, and we appreciate the time that you've taken to be here. OG Nick Marsh wants to know, do you guys have trouble deciphering each other's lyrics, or are you always on the same page when you work together? I know for a lot of people who comment on the record and love the record, they often categorize a lot of the writing as dense or cryptic, and is that ever something? Oh, I think we lost Woods for a second there. Oh, he's back. Is that ever something that you two are having to check in with each other on, or is it, apparent from the jump what both of you are just kind of, writing about and trying to get to the heart of when you're kind of working on a track?
No, I don't have I don't have an issue understanding what Woods is trying to say. I never said, what are you talking about?
We definitely sometimes have conversations like, what will this be about?
Oh, yeah, before. Yeah, before, but not like after.
Yeah, after I would just listen to it, be like, all right, well, this is what we're doing.
Well, as a duo, when you're making songs together and writing and thinking about what ideas you're trying to convey in your music, is there kind of a decision-making process when you're thinking about how the audience is going to take this or digest this, and consider for a moment, what are we going to put out there in a very blatant way, and what are we going to make people have to think about in order to, sort of decipher it?
I'm not thinking about what the audience can understand or something like that. No, I'm not thinking about that.
Sometimes after I write something, I mean, I guess there are times when I'm writing something when I'm like, is this clear to me, or am I making some jump that doesn't make sense and is messing it up? That happens, or like seems like a cheat. You know what I mean? Like you're like, I'm just trying to write this thing, but I haven't really figured out how to write it. That could happen. But yeah, normally, if it even occurs to me that, oh, well, is somebody going to get this or understand this, it's usually like way afterwards. And then a lot of times it's stuff that I think is crazy obvious, and people are like, it's this bizarre situation. And you're like, no, it's just like the end of um, the Makami joint, you know, that there's that extra part at the end of it when there's that flip to the steel tip dove little part. And it's about, I mean, it's about a lot of things, but the narrative that's happening is just when you're a kid and you like see Michael Jordan or somebody in Sports Illustrated, and you like tear the page out and like tape it to your wall and be like, it's something bigger than life to you. And then eventually you're still in that room, but you've outgrown the things, or, you know, I don't know. It's just totally different. You know what I mean? There's a point in time in your life when you're really like, man, if I just keep practicing basketball, who knows? And then there's a point at your life when you're like, man, I'm 5'7", man. I need money, man. But you still have the Jordan poster on your wall, you know? Anyway.
Fert Goose is asking if you guys plan to, past this point, work on another collaborative record, if that's something that's in the works right now.
I don't think anyone has thought about that at all.
Nah, but we're in the sound family, so of course we'll, we're in the same circle, But no, we've just been working. He's working on something. I'm working on something, But yeah, and definitely Lucid definitely is a point that we both have of an artist that we both highly respect and regard. So
it's a triumvirate.
Yes.
There are a lot of musicians who, watch, these interviews and listen in, and Ryan's son is asking something, I guess, from that perspective, because creatively, I mean, no person is an island, obviously. And this person was wondering if either of you had any baseline advice for essentially engaging in a successful collaboration, which I think both of you could speak to, considering how much of each of your catalogs is spent bringing on other people, directing, curating, and getting the best out of the people that you're working with, while simultaneously trying to complement what they're doing as well.
Find somebody who's as good or better than you. And secondly, these two things are sometimes at odds. Have it be somebody who can actually work with and somewhat enjoy as a human being. Because a lot of times I think sometimes you're like, oh, this person's really talented, I can do something with them. And that just isn't necessarily true. Or in the long run, it could end up being not worth the trouble that you put into it, even though you like what they do, maybe they like what you do or whatever, but not everybody is going to work out as a working relationship over like a whole project. Some people you should just do like a song with, whatever the case may be. And secondly, find somebody that's good, that's talented, that inspires you and is pushing you in what you're doing. Or else you might as well be by yourself.
Moor Mother, same question.
Yeah, I would say, successful collaborations happen when you like really love what the other person is doing. And it doesn't have to be the whole body of work, but some points of reference that like really touches your heart, you know, so you can kind of go to that like deep place of like, I don't know what you want to call it. I don't know if there's a word for it. This kind of like how you feel about your own sound, this kind of deep love, you know? If you can find that about someone, you know, then you can kind of meet in this kind of, I don't know, I'm starting to sound too new agey, you know? But I'm just saying, you know, really have a deep relationship with some part of their sound, you know. That's what that's what I that's what I do. That's one of the most successful things, you know. Woods is a great writer, you know. There's lines that can, you know, that hit me, you know. So it's like when you work with people, some people have tones, you know. You gotta listen, you know. You gotta really listen to what people are doing. And I know Orion's son. I hope that made sense.
No, you know,
You could also,
no, I think it
yeah.
did. And I think it, you know, sort of opens the door for another question that I'm kind of wondering off the back of this. I mean, considering all the people that you two have worked with and your personal artistic ambitions, like, are there ever any points, and, you know, this could also bring some perspective to the musicians watching as well. Are there any points at which maybe you have like your heart set on a certain collaboration or an introduction or a crossover of some sort with somebody or a group of people, and it doesn't happen? Maybe there's a rejection, or maybe like the introduction's messed up, or it doesn't come together for some other reason. Like, is there something that you guys have to personally kind of put yourself, you know, mindset you have to put yourself into to, I guess, kind of move past that and just, you know, go on to something else and just get your heart set off of that and just, you know, work on something else, work on another project?
Yeah, you just have to move on. It's sometimes it's not in the same, you know, people are going through so much. I never hold a grudge against anyone over something like this, you know. Um, you know, it's unfortunate, but you will, if it's meant to be, you will work together. You know, maybe it's just not that project, you know, so you can't sweat it too much. Believe there was people I wanted to work with for this project that the timing didn't work, you know, but that just means whenever it does, you know, it'll be perfect.
In the case of this specific project, for sure, there were some things that didn't work out. Although a lot of the things I wanted to either came together or somehow were delivered in a separate form.
Yeah.
And as on the bigger question, I would say it's one that's important for this entire thing, if you're going to be doing it and trying to really be doing it, which is that, with very rare exceptions, nobody owes you anything. That's really what it is. If you're going to be sitting around, you know, of course it happens, but then you have to remember, I thought I was going to go on tour with this person and then this and that, and then it doesn't happen, and you might feel some type of way. But honestly, nobody owes you a spot on the tour. Nobody, with rare exceptions. There are obviously exceptions. Some people you might actually owe something to you, but the vast majority of people don't owe you anything. And if things don't happen, they don't happen.
All right. Well, look, you guys have been great. I appreciate you both coming through and just being open books and talking to me about the record and answering viewer questions as well. And you've just been great. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
It's nice to see those CDs still alive, and you know,
and a couple of them are yours, so you know, don't worry about that.
It takes a lot to still have ownership of CDs, man, because people want you to throw them out. Constantly try to get you to throw them out.
Honestly, they're less cumbersome than the vinyl, so you know it's.
Oh, but vinyl are cool.
Yeah. No, there's a cool factor. There's absolutely a cool factor, but you know, sometimes just like the CDs are just easier sometimes.
Yeah, I can dig it. All right, man. Thank you.
All right, you guys are fantastic. Thanks again for coming through, and have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you.